Hallowtide, they call it. The time when the old veil between this world and the world of the quiet things wears thin as muslin, and the year turns its shoulder, shrugging off the warmth and reaching for the chill. It is a season of profound mists, of damp cobbles, and of shadows that lengthen and deepen with an almost alarming enthusiasm. The air itself feels heavy with stories, not of the things that will happen, but of the countless things that have already happened upon this ancient land. You know the feeling well, the sudden, pressing need for sanctuary, for a place where the ordinary world's worries might be quieted, if only for an hour. Perhaps you walked too far, perhaps you thought too deeply, or perhaps the swirling, silver-grey fog simply chose you, a temporary host, deposited precisely on the edge of the unexpected. The lanes start to reorganize themselves when the mist is at its thickest, and the city's lights reduce to mere sputtering coughs. The familiar is gently replaced by the necessary, and if you are wandering a certain winding, unseen thoroughfare, a path known only to the lost and the thoughtful, you may, just for a night, happen upon a door that should not exist, a door set into the ivy-covered brick, a door lit by a single, unwavering brass lantern, a door that promises warm leather, old paper, and profound silence. You stand now on the threshold of the Midnight Bookshop of Holloway Lane. It is a place dedicated not to selling books, but to settling accounts. A cosy haven guarded by an uncanny proprietor, where patrons come not for literature, but for a brush with the quiet magic that resolves the tangles of the soul. Inside, the fire is lit, the books are waiting, and the thing you have been running from all year is about to step out of the shadows and sit down to tea. Draw near, settle in, and let the old, slow magic of the story lead you to rest. The evening had truly settled, not with a gentle fade, but with a sudden, damp and encompassing chill. It was a proper end of October evening, the kind where the air itself felt heavy and old, thick with the scent of wet stone and bonfires long extinguished. You walked slowly, having wandered off the familiar thoroughfare of the High Street and into the narrow, winding vein of Holloway Lane. It was a path you rarely took, a place where the gas lamps seemed to argue with the deepening gloom, their weak, sputtering light barely pushing back the darkness. A mist, a proper coastal fog, had begun to roll in. It wasn't the thin, silvery kind, but a dense cotton wool grey that swallowed the sounds of the distant town. The world shrank to a small circle around your boots, the slick paving stones reflecting the patchy light like wet slate. You instinctively pulled your collar higher, your breath turning to small, vanishing clouds as you hurried past the tall, silent brick walls that defined this ancient part of the city. It was the sudden lack of familiar architecture that first caught your notice. One moment, There was the solid, unchanging curve of a Victorian wall. The next, the fog had thinned just enough to reveal a break in the masonry, a small, recessed doorway where only blank brick had ever stood before. You paused, a peculiar prickling sensation running up your arms. There was a faint scent here that cut through the dampness, a clean, dry aroma of old paper and pipe tobacco, a smell as comforting as a well-worn armchair. Hanging beside the door, defying the pervasive gloom, was a single brass lantern. It wasn't modern electric, but a proper, heavy thing, its wick casting a warm honey gold glow that seemed to defy the cold outside. The light illuminated a faded sign, barely legible beneath a tangle of climbing ivy. The Midnight Bookshop. You hesitate only for a moment. Perhaps it was the bone-deep chill, or maybe the curious lack of sound from inside. But something urged you forward. The door itself was heavy oak, deeply scored with age, and a faint green patina near the handle. You reach out, your fingers closing around the cool metal of the latch, and push the door inward. The atmosphere within was an instant, palpable relief. It was a world away from the grasping cold of Holloway Lane. The air here was warm and dry, rich with the aforementioned scent of paper, leather, and something else, cinnamon, perhaps, or a faint, sweet vanilla. The light inside was gentle, cast not by overhead fixtures, but by a collection of table lamps and a magnificent roaring fire set in a grand stone hearth at the back of the room. The shop was small, but every square inch was thoughtfully packed. Shelves of books stretching from floor to ceiling created narrow canyons of knowledge. The wood was dark and polished, reflecting the firelight in the deep, comforting pools. A low, continuous hum, like the distant thrumming of a contented bee, permeated the room. You step further inside, carefully closing the heavy door behind you, and the street outside seemed to vanish entirely, as if the fog had wiped it from existence. You take a slow, deep breath, letting the warmth settle the nerves the fog had raised. A few quiet patrons were scattered about, each tucked into a different corner, looking entirely absorbed. Near the fire, a stout man in an impeccably neat tweed coat was seated in a leather armchair. Nearer the front, a woman was tracing the spine of a book with an ink-stained finger. In a far corner, near a tall stack of maps, an elderly gentleman was bent over a large book, his hair dusted faintly with a powdery substance. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft spat of the fire and the whisper of turning pages. You feel a polite urge to apologize for your intrusion, for tracking the wet fog into their warm haven. But before you can murmur a word, the stout man by the fire rises with an economy of movement, his eyes, which are a surprising shade of light blue, fixed upon you. He approaches with a measured, soft step that makes no sound on the wooden floor. His tweed coat is truly impeccable, the kind of tailoring that speaks of a bygone era. His waistcoat a deep emerald green. He offers you a small, knowing smile that seems to crinkle the corners of his eyes, eyes that appear to have seen many a fog-bound traveller wander in. "Good evening," he says, his voice a low, resonant baritone, possessing that particular calm clarity found in old BBC radio announcers. "We've been expecting you, I think, or at least expecting someone to eventually notice the lantern. The fog often provides a certain necessary invisibility. Wouldn't you agree?" He makes the comment sound perfectly reasonable. A simple observation on the night's weather, rather than a profound statement on fate. You offer a silent gesture or a small tentative smile, confirming that his assumption of your being expected, while unsettling, is somehow also a relief. "Mr. Whitcomb," he introduces himself, with a courteous nod of his head, his silver hair neatly slicked back, proprietor, general factorum, and occasional curator of lost causes. He gestures to the room with an open hand. "Everything here you see has a purpose. Even the books on the very highest shelves have only been waiting for the right person to come and read them." You nod, acknowledging the truth in his words. The atmosphere here suggests that nothing is accidental. Mr. Whitcomb's gaze is calm but penetrating, as if he is gently sifting through the thoughts you barely knew you had. He doesn't ask what you're looking for, nor what brought you here. He simply seems to know. "Tonight, I think," he says, turning and walking to a small, oak-fronted display case near the counter. "Tonight is a night for facing certain unsettled things. The mist outside is good for holding them in place, you see, allowing us a moment to examine them before they dissipate." He reaches into the case and pulls out a book. It is a thin volume, no larger than your hand, bound in deep forest green leather that has been worn soft along the edges. Its title is entirely obscured, or perhaps simply non-existent. What catches your breath is the cover's embossing. It is a subtle, visible only when it catches the firelight, delicate, almost invisible pattern of faint silver webs. They run across the leather like fine stitching, converging at a central point that, when you look closely, seems to shimmer with a minuscule six-sided gleam. The design is undeniably beautiful in its intricate detail, yet it sends a sudden, sharp, and entirely unsettling knot into your stomach. Mr. Whitcomb holds it out to you, his expression entirely benign. "This one, I feel, belongs with you. If only for a few hours. It has been waiting on the shelf for a long time, quietly collecting the dust of forgotten worries." You reach out and take the book. The leather is surprisingly cool beneath your fingertips. Not cold, but possessing a low, constant temperature that seems to sink into your palm. You turn it over, examining the unsettling design, and the knot in your stomach tightens. It is the feeling of a thought you have suppressed for too long. A small, crawly anxiety that you have meticulously kept beneath the surface of your conscious mind. You thank him quietly, the words coming out as a soft whisper, feeling that speaking any louder might shatter the perfect quiet of the room. "Not at all," Mr. Whitcomb replies, gently guiding you toward the grand fireplace. "Please, join our small gathering. The light is best for reading by the fire, and the company here, I assure you, is precisely the company you require." You nod your acceptance. The invitation feels less like a request and more like a gentle, firm necessity. You make your way to the hearth. The strange, webbing-embossed book held securely in your hand, its mere presence a silent promise of the unusual things you are about to encounter within the warm, safe, and undeniably uncanny walls of the Midnight Bookshop. You stand by the grand, rough-hewn stone fireplace. The warmth of the fire a profound contrast to the cold moisture you had shed outside. The embers glowed a deep, patient orange, throwing flickering light that danced across the spines of the books lining the closest wall. It was not a tidy fire, but a sprawling, generous beast of stacked logs that crackled with cheerful enthusiasm, sounding less like burning wood and more like someone lightly whispering a secret. The book that Mr. Whitcomb had pressed into your hands, the one with the unsettling silver webs, felt like a strange anchor. You shifted slightly, the cool, smooth leather against your palm, and tried to focus your attention on the room itself, attempting to catalogue this sanctuary before its unusual atmosphere overwhelms you entirely. The shelves here were not alphabetized in any discernible way. You noticed titles that seemed to contradict one another. A severe, leather-bound volume on The Complete Mathematics of the Invisible, resting beside a light buttercup yellow book titled A Very Small History of Teacups. You peer closely at one label, Lost Things and What Became of Them. Another spine, thick and dark, bears a single word, perhaps. The light is the real magic here. It spills from lamps with fringed shades, casting pools of buttery yellow and deep amber, allowing the shadows to exist only as harmless, soft-edged companions. These are not the hungry shadows of the outside fog, but civilized, bookish shadows, content to sit quietly in the corners and wait their turn. Mr. Whitcomb, seeing you taking in the landscape of his shop, gives a small, almost undetectable smile. A library is simply a history of the world, he murmurs, his tone conversational, though his eyes remain deeply aware. But a bookshop, my dear friend, is a history of intentions. Every title you see here represents not what was, but what will be, or perhaps what needed to be. You thank him quietly for the insight, the words settling in your mind like dust motes in the lamplight. You agree with his assessment. This place feels less like a place of commerce and more like a curated dream. He gestures with his chin toward the far corner of the room, near a tall, thin grandfather clock whose hands, you notice with a slight jolt, are frozen solid at precisely 12 minutes past midnight. Our other guests are well acclimated, he says, his voice dropping slightly, inviting you into a shared confidence. They came in from the fog, just as you did. The mist, as you might find, often has a way of depositing people exactly where they ought to be. You turn your attention towards the other patrons, studying their quiet dedication. Nearer the fireplace sits the stout man. He has the severe, close-cropped haircut of a soldier, and the weariness clings to him like an ill-fitting suit. He holds a stack of thin, yellowed envelopes bound with a piece of dark, fraying twine. His right arm, you notice, is held stiffly across his chest, the careful posture of someone protecting a deep, unseen ache. You sense a residual guilt clinging to him, something lodged in his soul like shrapnel. Near the tall, dark shelves, you see the woman. There is a faint, clean smell of soap and steam around her. Her hands, resting on the slim volume in her lap, are lightly ink-stained. Her exhaustion is profound, etched around her eyes and the tight set of her mouth. She seems to be longing for stillness. And in the back corner near the maps, the elderly gentleman is bent over a huge, heavy recipe book. A dusting of flour clings to his cuffs. His face holds the profound sorrow of someone whose identity was tied to a craft and a family structure tragically removed. You catch the faintest, most fleeting hint of warm bread around him. You watch them for a moment, and they seem utterly separate from the clock-stopping, magical strangeness of the shop. They're simply people, heavy with the weight of the ordinary world, accidentally finding solace in a place that shouldn't exist. Mr. Whitcomb clears his throat, gently retrieving your attention. "Ah, yes," he says, as if reading your very thought. "The beautiful tragedy of the ordinary soul. And now, you." He places a delicate, woven basket on the small reading table next to your armchair. A low, comfortable piece upholstered in dark green leather. The basket contains small, hard biscuits shaped like crescent moons and a thermos flask. A little something to keep the chill at bay. No need to worry about the fog outside while you are here, he assures you. This establishment offers a sort of internal amnesty from external anxieties. You settle into the armchair, and the leather sighs beneath your weight. A deep, contented exhalation. The book rests on your lap, and you examine the silver web embossing again. Now that you are warm and seated, the anxiety it triggered earlier returns, more insistent this time. The webbing is perfectly symmetrical, almost machine-tooled, but it feels organic. It is beautiful, yes, but it is the terrifying beauty of perfect, cold efficiency. You don't know what you are afraid of, only that something is watching you, watching patiently. This particular anxiety, this silver spider's web, feels like a sudden, unwelcome awareness of a small, necessary lie you tell yourself every day to get through the mundane. You confirm your thanks with a small, gentle inclination of your head, letting the silence acknowledge his hospitality. You raise your eyes to Mr. Whitcomb. "But why this book?" you silently ask him, allowing the question to linger in the air between you. He nods, accepting the unspoken query, because the book chooses the reader, not the other way around, particularly in the fog. The fog, you see, is merely time given a visible shape, a slow, swirling reminder that not everything proceeds in a straight line. And when time slows, we notice the things we may have kept hidden. He walks back toward the counter, his tweed coat blending perfectly with the old wood panelling. And he picks up a heavy ledger. "Take your time," he instructs, his voice a soft final note. "There is no haste in Holloway Lane tonight." You look down at the small, leather-bound volume. The firelight flickers across the cover, and for a brief moment, the silver web seems to glint, like moisture on silk. You take a breath, preparing yourself, and finally, gently, you open the book. The paper inside is cream-coloured and slightly coarse, and the scent of the printing ink is sharp and clean. You turn the first page. The writing is not printed, but appears to be handwritten. A small, elegant script in dark violet ink. Not entirely unlike the copperplate used in old deeds and ledgers. You begin to read the first, simple sentence on the page. The simple, elegant words on the first page of your book are not a greeting, but an instruction. The violet ink immediately draws your eye. Its colour is rich and deep under the soft lamplight. You must first understand the binding if you wish to read the contents. The sentence causes a small chill to run down your neck. The implication is clear. The silver web on the cover is far more than decoration. You look up, momentarily stunned by the immediate, personal nature of the text, and find Mr. Whitcomb's gaze is upon you, a calm, knowing look that holds no surprise. He is simply waiting for you to accept the magic. You look down again, and the text continues. The threads upon the leather, though they seem merely decorative, are the finest strands of time's own tension. They are spun not by spiders of the earth, but by the fates of the quiet lanes, those beings who do not weave destiny, but merely hold the threads of anxiety and unfulfilled action that you have left hanging. Each silver filament is a commitment unkept, a difficult word unspoken, a fear placed in the dark and left to grow. To open this book is to agree to face the tensile strength of that which you have avoided. This is why the others are here. Their burdens are visible to anyone who has eyes to see. A stack of letters, ink-stained fingers, a dusting flower. They are holding their threads. Now you hold yours. You look up from the page, a new awareness of the room washing over you. The bookshop, so cosy a moment ago, now feels like a subtly charged chamber, a crucible for quiet, personal confrontation. The silence is thick with the weight of 4 people finally facing their private, silvery threads. Mr. Whitcomb, now meticulously polishing a glass counter near the front, speaks without looking up. His voice is a low, discreet murmur, clearly meant only for you, confirming the insights the book has already given you. Ah yes, our temporary residence. Arthur Bell, he says, the name settling the stout man's identity in your mind. He is waiting for a certain correspondence to be finalized. He carries a guilt that is not truly his own, but one he volunteered for, which is often the heaviest kind. You nod, acknowledging the truth in his assessment. Mr. Whitcomb glances briefly toward the woman, his fingers running over the glass surface. And that, my dear friend, is Margaret Hollow, a laundress, a woman who spends her life washing away other people's grime, leaving her with no time to wash away her own fatigue. She seeks the quiet assurance of unbroken sleep. He then nods towards the baker, and finally, Edwin Clark, a man whose family history was quite literally built on warm bread and community. He is currently reading a recipe for something he can no longer make in a shop that is no longer standing. He seeks the taste of restored memory. They are here, Mr. Whitcomb concludes, resting his hands on the counter, to exchange something necessary for something vital. An old letter for peace, ink-stained hands for sleep, and the scent of flower for the truth of what was lost. And you, of course, are here to examine your silver threads. He gestures to the basket and the thermos. Now please, your tea is cooling. Read a little. You feel a profound sense of having been given privileged information, a quiet insight into the fragile, private narratives of others. The uncanny nature of the shop is not in flashing lights or loud spells, but in the gentle, total knowledge of your needs. You take a biscuit. It is surprisingly flavourless, but warm, and turn your attention back to the violet-inked words in the dark, cool book. You watch Arthur, the ex-soldier. The book's insight makes you see his contained grief with startling clarity. His fingers, rough and thick, worry at the twine binding the packet of letters. He is not reading the words on the yellowed paper, but rather the empty spaces between the lines, the conversations that never happened. The firelight catches his eyes, and they have the far-away, reflective look of a man forever standing on a windswept hill. The weight of his sacrifice seems to push him physically down into the soft leather of his chair. As you continue to watch, something subtle happens. The letters in his hand, which were so plainly bound with twine, seem to harden. The yellowed paper takes on a faint, ethereal sheen, almost like thinly polished ivory. The air around his hands shimmers. He finally opens the top letter, his movements slow and laboured. He reads the text, a single short paragraph, and his face, which was set like stone, begins to tremble, just at the jawline. He then closes his eyes, pressing his thumb hard onto the paper, a soundless act of acceptance. The book in your lap seems to pulse, a faint heat emanating from the silver webs. You glance down at the violet script, and a new paragraph has appeared, seamlessly woven into the bottom of the first entry. The great lie of noble sacrifice is that it truly removes the pain. It merely transfers the burden of unspoken farewells. His letters are not meant to be read, but to be finally, truly answered. Only then will the threads holding his arm stiff dissolve. The text is a powerful echo of the man's suffering, and it is a chilling demonstration of the book's uncanny power. His eyes open, and for the first time, the guilt seems to have receded, leaving behind only quiet fatigue. You carefully turn your attention to Margaret Hollow, the laundress. Her body is still slumped, her exhaustion less a feeling and more a permanent feature of her posture. The book she holds is so thin, it barely qualifies as a volume. It looks more like a pamphlet or a hymn book. It has the quiet, unassuming look of something used for comfort, worn smooth by countless nights. You watch her hands. The ink stains on her fingers are a deep, permanent shade of blue-black, as though the dye has seeped beneath the skin itself, a visible testament to the endless hours of her labour. She is tracing the cover of her book, not reading it, but using her fingertips to memorize the texture. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible sound emerges from her slim volume. It is a low, continuous hum, a gentle vibration that you feel more through the floorboards and the arm of your own chair than you hear with your ears. It is not the busy thrumming of the shop's general quiet, but something deeper, richer, and strangely familiar, like the distant, rhythmic turning of a great, moss-covered water wheel in a quiet, forgotten valley. The sound seems to be affecting her profoundly. Her breathing, which was shallow and tight, begins to slow and deepen. Her shoulders relax, easing out of their perpetual slump. Her mouth, which was set in a firm line of quiet endurance, softens, and her face takes on a look of utter, childlike peace. It is the purest picture of relief you have ever witnessed, a quiet miracle of surrender. The script on your page answers the sound before you can form the question, its words appearing to resonate with the sound from Maggie's corner. The threads that bind the weary are spun of sound and repetition, the churning thoughts of the day, the relentless drum of worry in the dark. Her book is not filled with words, but with the silence of the ancient hills, set to a rhythm that is slow, safe, and absolute. It offers her the only thing she has truly lost, the ability to stop. Listen closely. That sound you hear is the unspinning of her anxious thread. You close your eyes briefly, letting the hypnotic low vibration of the bookshop settle over you. The humming is indeed a profound lullaby, a sound that settles not just the body, but the inner turmoil. You open your eyes, offering a silent, internal benediction for the existence of Mr. Whitcomb and his quiet establishment, which allows such simple, vital miracles. You watch Maggie drift into a deep doze, her book still cradled in her lap, her face now a quiet, unmarked landscape of rest. Your gaze moves to Edwin Clark, the old baker. The scent of warm bread which you noticed earlier is growing stronger now. A sweet, comforting cloud that lingers around his corner. It is a beautiful, evocative smell, yet it carries the melancholy weight of a ghost. He reads from his heavy, clasp-broken recipe book, his lips moving slowly over instructions that are clearly etched deep in his memory. He is not merely reading, he is rehearsing an incantation, recalling a world lost to time and accident. The pages of the book are brittle and worn, covered not only in recipes, but in faint, familial notes. Then, the true magic of his corner begins. The flour dusting his cuffs, the sad white remnant of his trade begins to stir. It does not fall off or blow away, but seems to lift in a fine golden dust, illuminated by the lamp beside him. The dust swirls gently, not randomly, but forming tiny, ephemeral shapes. The arch of a brick oven, the curve of a counter, the distinct geometric shape of a small market street. He is not reading about baking. He is conjuring the atmosphere of his lost shop, building it particle by particle in the warm, dry air of the bookshop. He reads a line aloud, so softly that it is barely audible, a deep, gentle sigh of a voice, and stir in the love, for that is the only yeast that truly lifts the loaf, and the measure of a perfect batch is not in its rise, but the joy it brings at dawn. As he murmurs the final word, the scent of bread peaks, not burnt or fresh, but alive with memory. It is the smell of a childhood kitchen, of purpose and of belonging. His face, which was drawn in the profound sorrow of loss, smooths out, replaced by a quiet, focused dignity. He is no longer just Edwin Clark, an old man in a cold bookshop. He is the master baker, presiding over a warm, spectral shop that exists only in the firelight. Your own tome vibrates again, and the violet ink informs you. The deepest wounds are those that remove the context of the soul. For him, the loss of his shop was the loss of his purpose and his family's name. His thread is a simple one, the unbearable finality of ash. His recipe book is restoring the structure line by line. The scent you smell is the memory made real, a proof that the love in the yeast cannot truly burn down. He is not making bread, he is making home. You have been granted a full, profound insight into the private sorrows and the magical remedies of the other patrons. Their presence here is not just an accident of the fog, but a perfect, synchronized example of the Midnight Bookshop's true purpose. You feel a quiet, certain anticipation settle over you. Now, it is your turn. You look down at the silver-webbed book on your lap, the book that holds the threads of your own anxiety and unfulfilled actions. The web on the cover seems to glow faintly, demanding your attention. You know the purpose of this place, to gently, magically compel you to face the silver threads you have spent so long avoiding. You take a deep, centering breath of the bookshop's air. Paper, fire, tobacco, and now the lingering comfort of memory and sleep. You consciously acknowledge the tension you feel in your stomach, the tight, unpleasant knot that the web design triggered. You understand that the magic here is safe, but the confrontation will be real. You place your hands on the cool webbed cover, prepared to turn the page and invite your own shadow into the light. You shift in the deep green armchair, the warmth of the fire at your back now feeling like a sturdy sentinel guarding your rear flank. The knowledge of the other patrons' quiet resolutions settles over you like a comforting weight. Arthur is still seated, his posture less rigid, the stack of letters resting quietly, finally at peace. Maggie's breathing is slow and even, her sleep deep and well-earned. Edwin, in his corner, hums a low, nearly silent tune, the quiet sound of a man who has remembered how to smile with his hands. The time for observation is over. The cool volume rests on your lap. the violet ink of the last page waiting patiently. You lift your right hand and place it on the cover, feeling the intricate pattern of the silver webbing beneath your palm. It is delicate yet cold, like touching filigree wire in a winter window. Possessing a faint electrical tension, the anxiety it represents is no longer a tight knot in your stomach, but a distinct, acknowledged presence. A challenge set before you in this warm, safe room. You finally turn the page. The next section of the book is not composed of prose or instruction, but appears as a single, enormous illustration rendered in sharp, unsettling charcoal lines. It is a detailed drawing of the Midnight Bookshop itself, with an eerie, mythic difference. The drawing depicts the shop not from the inside, but from above, as if the entire roof had been lifted off to reveal the interior as a vast, hushed stage. In the charcoal image, every detail of the shop is rendered in shades of grey. You see Mr. Whitcomb at his counter, Arthur by the fire, Maggie in her velvet chair, and Edwin by his maps. They are all recognisable, yet muted, their figures softened by the strange silvery light of the drawing. Their books glow with a soft ethereal radiance, a golden aura for Arthur's letters, a gentle azure for Maggie's lullaby, and a warm ochre hue for Edwin's recipes. Their magical remediation is visible, a silent energy radiating from their pages. Then you see your own figure, seated exactly where you are now. Above you in the illustration, the air is thick and dark, depicted with heavy, swirling cross-hatching, a vortex of unmanaged thoughts. The silver web from the cover is shown stretching away from your figure, not as decoration, but as thin, luminous lines of pure, distilled worry, attaching themselves to the walls, the lamps, and the ceiling beams of the drawn shop. These threads are manifold and specific. You see 1,000 small, everyday anxieties, unpaid bills, forgotten errands, lingering ache of past social mistakes, fear of saying the wrong thing, all represented by these cold, tiny filaments. They are the unanswered intentions the book mentioned, and seeing them mapped out gives them a terrifying, organized logic. The central point where all these silvery filaments converge is hovering directly over your head in the drawing, a dense, dark nucleus of fear, and from that central point, something begins to emerge. The charcoal drawing makes the process look slow and inexorable. You look up from the illustrated page, your eyes drawn magnetically to the shadowed corner of the real bookshop. The tall standard lamp there, with its deep green shade, seems to be battling the pervasive quiet, its light dimming perceptibly. In that corner, where the book said your threads converge, the shadows begin to deepen, becoming truly three-dimensional. They do not merely darken the air, they become a palpable, roiling substance, like thick black velvet slowly being stirred in a cauldron, pulling the light out of the air near the ceiling. The hum of the bookshop, the gentle, contented thrumming that was the bookshop's heartbeat, seems to grow quiet, as if the magic itself is holding its breath in anticipation. You feel a wave of fear, sharp, cold, and entirely real, wash over you, rising from your chest and seizing your throat. This is the peril and conflict you were warned about, a brush with danger that is intimate and absolute. The instinct to flee is immediate and strong, a sudden, powerful urge to drop the book and bolt for the comforting obscurity of the fog outside. Your palms are slick where they touch the book's cover, but you do not move. You press your feet firmly onto the wood floor, grounding yourself in the reality of the warm room, forcing yourself to inhabit the present moment. You remind yourself of the profound, simple peace won by Maggie, Arthur, and Edwin. The bookshop is a safe container. The fear is yours, and therefore manageable within these unchanging walls. The swirling shadow takes shape. It coalesces, growing denser, and then, with a soft, dry hiss, it solidifies. It is a spider, rendered in the same charcoal, unsettling texture as the illustration. It is not monstrous, not a creature of fantasy or horror, but a spider of a size that is slightly too large to be natural. Its presence invading the cozy scale of the room. Its body is dark, sleek, and utterly silent. It drops from the high shadow on a thread that is quite silver and luminous, and its multiple eyes, though large, seem to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The creature is the physical manifestation of your central defining fear. The cumulative weight of all those small, silvery threads of anxiety woven into a single, quiet, patient presence. It drops slowly onto the surface of the green reading table next to your armchair, its legs moving with that fluid, unnerving motion unique to its kind. It is close enough that you can see the faint, hair-like textures on its charcoal dark carapace. It does not threaten physically. It simply exists, sitting in the warm lamplight, patient and perfect. It is a profound stillness, a silent, terrifying symbol of every insecurity you carry. You stare at the spider. For a moment, the world narrows entirely to the expanse of the table, the gleam of its silver-spun thread, and the absolute horror of its presence. Your heart pounds heavily against your ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm that is the only loud noise in the quiet bookshop. The cold knot in your stomach returns, tighter than before. In that instant of paralysis, the silver threads of the spider's web become something else, a frozen moment from your past. It is not merely the spider you fear, but the inaction that its presence represents. You are suddenly transported back to a small, dusty corner of an old attic, perhaps, or a dimly lit hallway from years ago. You remember seeing a similar glint of silver, a crucial chance for action left tragically undone, a difficult conversation postponed, a small but vital ambition shelved out of vague, pervasive dread. The cold efficiency of the charcoal creature on the table now mimics the chill of that old unresolved avoidance. You feel the crushing weight of all those small, unnecessary commitments and worries pressing down, embodied in the creature's silent vigilance. The spider is the living memory of every time you chose to stop, to wait, to let a small problem grow monstrous in the dark. The ink in your book, however, refuses to yield to the fear. It continues to write itself, the script appearing slowly, urging you to action. The spider is not here to bite you, only to catalogue. It is the accountant of your fear, the mirror of your avoidance. The web is not a trap set for you by others, but one you have woven around yourself with unanswered intention. To defeat this creature is not to crush it, but to look into its mirrored eyes and accept the list of charges. Your thread will only break if you refuse to be paralyzed. You stare at the spider. You feel the cold, metallic taste of fear in your mouth. And then a profound realization hits. The paralysis is the web itself. To move is to break the spell. You make a decision. You do not shout or jump. You feel the fear, acknowledge its presence, and then you force yourself to take a slow, deep breath, pushing the air all the way down to the knot in your stomach. You count to 4, letting the air settle, letting the panic ebb. Then, you do the simplest, most powerful thing available. You move your head. You move it slowly, deliberately, as if wading through heavy water until your eyes are completely focused on the creature. You stare into the dark, silent depths of its gaze, consciously accepting the overwhelming fear of dread it carries. You hold the gaze. You are terrified, but you are also a reader in a magical bookshop, an observer of 3 quiet miracles who must now perform your own. The webbed cover of the book in your lap seems to vibrate again, a low hum of deep satisfaction. You reach out with your free hand, not to attack or to shoo, but to simply turn the page. It is the only act of true defiance allowed in this shop of quiet intentions. It is the refusal to stop reading your own story. As your thumb touches the rough cream paper, the effect is instantaneous and dramatic. The charcoal arachnid shudders. Its detailed, perfect form begins to break apart at the edges, not with violence, but with a gentle dissolution. The darkness of its body dissolves into starlight. Tiny, white, glittering motes of light that float upwards, catching the deep glow of the lamp. The lamp is so bright and clean that it purifies the dark corner entirely. The silver thread that held it to the ceiling does not snap, but unspins itself into pure, shimmering light, vanishing completely. You remain still, breathing the dry, papery air. The tension in the corner is gone. The shadows are returned to their proper, civilized place, merely soft cushions against the light. The pounding in your chest immediately softens, easing back into the slow, meditative rhythm of the bookshop. fear doesn't vanish entirely. The book promised no such impossible magic, but the fear becomes what it always should have been: bearable. It is a shadow that you have looked at, named, and deprived of its power to paralyze you. The knot in your stomach loosens, resolving itself into the feeling of quiet, exhausted relief. The final line on the newly turned page is written in a new, comforting gold ink. The threads are broken. The list of charges is dismissed. You have simply turned the page on that which held you. Rest now. You close the book and place it gently on the reading table. You lean back into the worn leather of the chair, feeling the profound, heavy safety of the room wash over you completely. The fire crackles its secret, and the low hum of the bookshop resumes its comforting cadence. The conflict is over, and the only path now is towards warmth and the rest of the final morning. You look around the shop, noticing the dust motes dancing in the golden lamplight, and you feel an ancient sense of peace settle into the space where the anxiety had lived. The small, impossible bookshop feels like a tiny, perfect sanctuary carved out of the mist of time. The silence is not empty, but filled with 1,000 years of quiet, settled intentions. The scent of the old leather and the drying ink is the smell of things resolved, of stories justly concluded. Arthur Bell, the soldier, raises his head, his face entirely smooth now. He catches your eye, not with a demanding glance, but a polite, understanding nod of acknowledgement. A quiet greeting between two people who have both just returned from a long journey. He lifts his once stiff right arm and flexes his fingers, a small, subtle motion of liberation. He is no longer reading his letters, but simply holding them, the paper now looking like ordinary, harmless memory. Maggie Hollow sleeps on, the volume in her hands now radiating not just a hum, but the deep, rhythmic silence of 1,000 miles of British countryside at midnight. The laundress has found the stillness she craves, and Edwin, the baker, closes his heavy recipe book with a soft sigh of satisfaction, a noise that sounds exactly like the gentle click of a latch on a long-lost home. He looks younger now, his eyes bright with a memory that has been restored from ash. You take comfort in their stillness, allowing their achieved peace to be a blanket of security around your own exhausted relief. The bookshop, you realize, has not just provided a setting for a magical encounter, but a gentle fellowship of the healed. The fire, though still casting its deep, rich glow, no longer roars with the same defiant enthusiasm of midnight. It has settled into a quiet, profound sigh of embers, a bed of patient orange heat that suggests a long, steady slumber is approaching. The grandfather clock in the corner remains stubbornly frozen at precisely 12 minutes past midnight. Yet the quality of the light filtering into the shop has undeniably changed. The warmth that had been purely internal, generated by the fire and the magic, is now touched by a subtle, creeping grey, the first honest light of dawn attempting to pierce the deep London fog. You sit for a long while, simply breathing the settled air, The cool, quiet presence of the leather-bound book next to you is no longer a source of dread, but a symbol of simple, accepted truth. The exhaustion you feel is physical, a pleasant, heavy weight in your limbs, not the wired, anxious fatigue that had driven you into the fog hours before. You have spent the night in profound labour, facing an ancient, silent enemy, and now your soul is finally allowed to rest. You gently stretch your fingers, noticing the way the lamplight catches the faint sheen of sweat on your skin, the mark of a battle won without a sword, fought only with the will to remain still and look. The knot in your stomach is entirely gone, replaced by a strange, quiet sense of internal space, as if a tightly packed box has finally been emptied. It is a feeling of true, uncomplicated liberation. You look towards the other patrons, finding deep comfort in their final, peaceful states. Their stillness is a mirror of your own. Arthur Bell shifts in his chair. He opens his eyes and they are clear, free of the haunted, windswept look they carried earlier. He gathers the stack of letters, no longer clutching them in a gesture of guilt, but holding them lightly, like ordinary correspondence from a distant, well-loved family member. The yellowed paper now looks harmless, a settled history rather than an active wound. He catches your eye and gives you a small, direct smile, no longer apologetic or burdened, but the genuine smile of a man who has finally squared his account with a long, dead past. He nods to you, a gentle acknowledgement of shared sanctuary, and rises with an unfamiliar lightness and easy grace. He walks quietly toward the counter, where Mr. Whitcomb is still meticulously polishing a glass case, though his movements now seem infused with the rhythm of the approaching morning. Arthur lays his letters on the counter. Mr. Whitcomb looks up, his light blue eyes warm. "Leaving us, Arthur?" "The mail is finally settled, sir," Arthur replies, his voice steady, devoid of the previous rough edge of duty. "Thank you for the address." "It was always your own address, Arthur. We just held the stamp for you," Mr. Whitcomb says, his tone quiet and knowing, wrapping the packet in a simple brown paper tie. He doesn't ask for payment. He only offers a single instruction. "Take a walk through the market. Buy some fresh bread. Eat it slowly." Arthur nods, tucking the wrapped letters carefully into his inner coat pocket. He gives a final, respective nod to the room, including a last, lingering look toward you, a silent farewell to a temporary comrade. He opens the heavy oak door and steps out. A thick grey air of the diminishing fog immediately enveloping him. He doesn't hesitate or look back, walking with the confidence of someone whose next step is known to him. Next, Maggie Hollow stirs, the low hum radiating from her thin volume fading entirely, and she wakes with a single, long, luxurious sigh, the sound of decades of weariness finally being expelled. She stretches languidly, her ink-stained fingers uncurling, no longer locked in their protective trace of the book's spine. Her face, which had been etched with exhaustion, is now smooth and unmarked, the portrait of a woman newly rested, refreshed by the profound silence of her borrowed book. She looks down at the slim volume in her lap, touching the cover gently, as if bewildered by its power. She rises with an unfamiliar lightness, her movements buoyant, almost gliding across the wooden floor. "Mr. Whitcomb," she whispers, her voice soft with gratitude, "I have to thank you. I slept, truly, without the churn. The clock simply needed setting to a slower time for you, Margaret. A time dictated by the hills, not by the city," Mr. Whitcomb replies, his voice in a low, soothing cadence. He gestures to the book in her hand. That volume is a copy of Deep Silence, bound in the velvet of a quiet night. Keep it somewhere dust can't reach it, and remember to listen to it when the city is too loud. She nods, clutching the book to her chest. "I will go and find a place for it right away. My shift starts soon, but it won't find me lacking today. I feel ready to face all the dirt the city can throw at me." She pauses by the door, turning her face slightly toward the soft light of the fading fire. A woman ready to face her day with renewed strength. You offer her a tentative smile, confirming her simple victory, and she returns it. Faint, lovely bloom of peace across her features. Then she too vanishes into the greying mist of Holloway Lane. You watch their quiet departures, taking heart from the visible, profound change in their bearing. Their threads, too, have been broken, leaving them lighter, truer versions of themselves, walking into the dawn with a quiet dignity that borders on the epic. The atmosphere is now one of transition, the ancient magic holding steady, but the mundane world patiently asserting its presence. Finally, Edwin Clark closes his heavy recipe book with a soft, final clack of the broken clasp. He rises slowly, taking his time, the movement deliberate and full of dignity, as though he is standing in a bakery once more. The smell of warm bread still lingers around his corner, but it is no longer melancholy. It is the scent of confident remembrance, a perfume of purpose. He approaches the counter and lays a small, carefully folded piece of paper beside the polish Mr. Whitcomb is using. It's not money, but a handwritten recipe for a simple, ancient rye loaf, penned in a clear, practiced hand. It is his payment, a piece of his restored soul. "Thank you, Whitcomb," Edwin says, his voice steady, filled with the warmth of phantom ovens. "The name is not gone. It's here. It's always been here." He taps his own temple gently. "Taste is what matters, not the bricks." Mr. Whitcomb unfolds the paper and reads the violet ink carefully. "A sound recipe, Edwin. A very sound recipe. The trick, I suspect, is the patience." "Patience," Edwin agrees, pulling on his thin leather gloves, and remembering that the joy is in the making, not the selling. The rest takes care of itself. He gives a short, quiet chuckle, the sound entirely authentic. He glances over his shoulder at the fire, at the chairs, and finally at you, still seated. He pauses, then offers you a quiet piece of advice, his gaze steady and kind. The kind of kindly grandfather might give. "The shadows, my friend, are always better behaved when you simply turn the page. Never let them sit too long in the dark. The light always finds them eventually." You nod deeply in understanding, thanking him for the counsel with a respectful inclination of your head. letting the wisdom of the words sink into your quiet, settled atmosphere. Edwin then turns, straightens his coat, and steps out into the morning, the faint dusting of flour on his cuffs now appearing not like a mistake, but like a dusting of fine, silvery luck, sign of his renewed craft. The shop is almost silent now, the patrons gone, their conflicts resolved. Only you and Mr. Whitcomb remain. He walks slowly from behind the counter, holding a small, silver-backed hairbrush, running his thumb over the bristles. "It's time for you too, I think," he says, his light eyes warm and reflective. The fog is lifting entirely now, and one should never be caught in an impossible bookshop after the sun has truly risen. It can be disruptive to the rhythm of the ordinary world. The magic prefers the hour of doubt. You rise from the chair, feeling the difference in your body, the pleasant, profound ache of peace and the weight of your newly claimed space. You pick up the book from the table. Its cover, you notice, is now entirely plain. The silver webbing, your anxiety, is completely gone, leaving only the smooth, deep green leather behind, clean and unmarred. You ask him quietly what you owe for the evening's experience, feeling that mere money is insufficient payment for the clarity and courage you have found. Mr. Whitcomb smiles, a deep, knowing expression devoid of any avarice. "You owe me nothing, my friend. You left a great deal of anxiety here, and that is fine currency. Though if you must pay..." He pauses, his gaze soft, focusing not on your face, but on the space just behind your shoulder. Tell someone about the fog. Not the bookshop, mind you. Just the quality of the mist you experienced tonight. Tell them how heavy and real it felt, and how warm the light was when you finally found it. You nod, accepting this strange, beautiful payment, a request for mindfulness over coin, for a witness to the simple magic of arrival. You offer him a genuine, heartfelt smile of gratitude. He opens the heavy oak door for you. The sound is loud and final in the sudden, deep silence of the bookshop. Instead of a thick, grasping mist, the air outside is now a pale, gentle grey pink. The fog is thinning rapidly, receding into the high walls of Holloway Lane, leaving behind only the cold, honest scent of damp earth and coming rain. You step out onto the cobbled street. The air is fresh and cold on your face. You turn back to give a final nod to Mr. Whitcomb, and you see him standing framed in the warm doorway, the single brass lantern now looking pale and humble against the morning. He raises one hand in a gesture of silent farewell, his face serene. You turn your back for only a single stride, walking toward the high street. The moment your heel connects with the second cobblestone, you glance back over your shoulder. The stretch of wall is entirely blank. The tall, silent brick of Holloway Lane is unbroken. The single brass lantern, the heavy oak door, the faded sign, and the Midnight Bookshop itself have utterly vanished, wiped from the fabric of the lane, waiting for the return of the deep, necessary fog. You smile to yourself. You carry the memory of facing the spider, the deep comfort of the shared resolutions, and the feeling of lightness in your chest. The courage you found is not miraculous strength. but the ability to simply turn the page. You walk toward the distant sounds of morning traffic, feeling the cool, honest air on your face, ready for the slow, sure peace of rest to lead you into the coming day. A peace earned in the silence of the night.